Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Friday night's Easy Path review. So as you can see, I am not Venerable Thupten children. Venerable children, Venerable Damcho and Venerable Jigme are right this minute in the south of India getting ready to hear His Holiness the Dalai Lama teach. And so we will be the recipients of this in a few weeks or months. So, as you've experienced in the previous weeks, microphone, I just turned it on. Okay. Are we having the sound now? Yep. Okay. Well, if you didn't hear the other part, that's okay. It wasn't so critical. As you remember from the past few weeks, this is going to be primarily a meditation. And so I'm just going to caution you, if you just happen to open up this video in a few weeks and you're not aware that it's going to be mostly meditation, you're going to be looking at a nun who looks like she's sleeping. So you might want to just turn the monitor off and just use it as a meditation with audio. Otherwise it'll be quite confusing. So we're going to begin and check out your body posture. We're going to be here for a little while. And just make sure that your spine is upright and relaxed. Your right hand is in your left with thumbs touching, and you can just let your hands rest on the top of your thighs. You can tilt your head slightly forward. And make sure that your eyes aren't closed. If your eyes are closed, you'll definitely go to sleep. And if your eyes are slightly open, just enough to get some light in, then you'll be able to stay more alert. So let's begin by doing a brief body scan that you can do on your own, just looking for places in your body that you might be holding tension. And then once you've done that, you can switch your attention to the breath. And so we'll do this for about 4 or 5 minutes. And following that, I'll set a motivation and we'll begin with the topic for the night. So now we'll set our motivation. Today is December 19th. If you're in Singapore, it's December 20th. And unless you're living in a monastery, it's quite likely that the sights and sounds of the Christmas season, the increased social engagements, the school concerts, preparing to travel to family, or having family come to you, are taking up a lot of your attention. And perhaps there will be some days in the next while where you'll have more time to engage in spiritual practice as well. But it's likely going to be a much busier time. And as we have about 12 days left in the year 2014, thinking about this always nudges us to do a review of the year. A review of how we are in a spiritual sense, in a worldly sense. And this part of the year also inspires us to renew our long-term goals. So think right now, what are my long-term spiritual goals? And then think, what specifically is holding me back from cultivating the virtuous qualities that I so want to continue to develop and strengthen and deepen? And then especially at this time of year, what are you taking refuge in? And is it reliable? Is it taking you in the direction of developing your wisdom and compassion to their fullest? Or is what you are taking refuge in keeping you distracted and engaged in habitual patterns that aren't beneficial to you or anyone else that you'll interact with? So now take some time to look right at, what am I taking refuge in? And let's rejoice that we've met the Dharma and that we have this opportunity right now to use this next hour and a bit to focus our mind on how meditating on the unfortunate realms can be one of the strong, compelling reasons to inspire us to take refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and to continue to exert joyous effort into our goal to attain full awakening for the benefit of all beings. So now in the space in front of me, on a precious throne, both high and wide, supported by 8 great lions, on a seat of multicolored lotus, moon, and sun discs, is my kind spiritual mentor in the form of the conqueror Shakyamuni Buddha. The color of his body is pure gold. On his head is the crown protuberance. He has one face and two hands. The right touches the earth. The left, in meditation posture, holds an alms bowl full of nectar. Elegantly he wears the 3 saffron-colored monastic robes. His body, made of pure light and adorned with the signs and marks of a Buddha, emanates a flood of light. Sitting in Vajra posture, he is surrounded by my direct and indirect spiritual mentors, by deities, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, heroes, heroines, and an assembly of Arya Dharma protectors. In front of him, on exquisite stands, are his teachings in the form of books of light. The members of the merit field look upon me with contentment. In turn, at the thought of their compassion and virtue, I have great faith in them. And then think, I and all sentient beings, my mothers from beginningless time until now, have continuously undergone the dukkha of cyclic existence and the suffering of the 3 lower realms. Nevertheless, it is still difficult to fathom the depth and the breadth of this. Now that I've attained a precious human life, so difficult to attain, and so meaningful once acquired, if I do not realize supreme liberation, in which all the dukkha of samsara is overcome, Guru Buddhahood, then once again I will have to experience the various torments of cyclic existence in general, and those of the 3 lower realms in particular. As I now have before me the mentor and the 3 jewels who can protect me from this pain, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, I will do all that I can to realize precious, perfect, and consummate Buddhahood. To this end, from the depths of my heart, I take refuge in the spiritual mentors and the 3 jewels. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. So now, after we recite the 4 immeasurables, we'll pause for a moment to reflect on them. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. Continue with the 7-limb prayer. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all my destructive actions accumulated since beginning this time, and rejoice in the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate all the virtues of myself and others to the Great Awakening. And now bring to mind everything that you find that's beautiful, that's precious to you. And make this very expansive. Imagine this offering going in all directions as far as your mind can take it. And include all the things that you have aversion for as well. And all of this we're going to offer to the holy beings. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. The objects of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, friends, enemies, and strangers, my body, wealth, and enjoyments, I offer these without any sense of loss. Please accept them with pleasure, and inspire me and others to be free from 3 poisonous attitudes. Iram Guru Ramna Mandalakam Niryataya. Glorious and precious root Guru, sit upon the lotus and moon seat on my crown, guiding me with your great kindness. Bestow upon me the attainments of your body, speech, and mind, the eyes through whom the vast scriptures are seen, supreme doors for the fortunate who would cross over to spiritual freedom. illuminators whose wise means vibrate with compassion, to the entire line of spiritual mentors I make request. So now as we say the mantra, light and nectar flow from the Buddha into us. And think that there is a Buddha on the crown of the heads of all sentient beings. The light from these Buddhas flow into all beings, and this does two things. It purifies negativities, and the second thing is that it brings inspiration that brings realizations. So we'll recite Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra 21 times. Try and keep that visualization going. Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soha. 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 So just continue to feel the vibration of the mantra in your mind and body. if you need to refresh the visualization of Shakyamuni Buddha on the crown of your head. This life basis, complete with freedom and fortune, that is so difficult to attain, and once attained, so meaningful, will soon end. After its destruction, I will not cease to exist, but I will be obliged to take rebirth. There are only two possible places of rebirth: a happy realm and a miserable realm. If I take rebirth in a miserable realm as a hell being, I will undergo inconceivable sufferings of heat, cold, and the like. If I take rebirth as a hungry spirit, the sufferings of hunger and thirst will plague me non-stop. If I take rebirth as an animal, the sufferings of ignorance, stupidity, eating others, and being eaten, again will plague me non-stop. It's our own mind that creates our experience in the lower realms. So how does this happen? And we can get a sense of this by reflecting in the following way. Remember a time when you were really paranoid and very fearful, terrified, so freaked out and frightened. And due to your fear, there was a lot of anger as well. So remember a time in your life when you were like that. Fearful, terrified, and filled with anger. And then imagine that mental state. Imagine getting stuck in that mental state. So stuck in that fearful, paranoid, angry mental state that everything you saw through that filter. So stuck in that mental state that everything around you would appear as a hellish realm. So we can see this in others. If somebody has a very disturbed mind, even though nobody else is trying to harm them, they see harm. Even though there's no danger, they're terrified. We can see that. And just imagine that mind getting so exaggerated, so huge, that it really did turn into the environment and the body. So that even if somebody took you out of that environment and put you in another one, you'd still see things the same way, because the mind is so stuck. So now we'll shift gears and take your mind now to a time. Remember a time in your life when you had so much craving and clinging and wanted something so badly, but you didn't have it. How was your mind? It was likely a mind of being completely obsessed, being unable to function because the mind is so totally stuck. Like when a relationship breaks up, for example. How the mind is completely stuck on the other person and you can't think about anything else. There's so much clinging, attachment, and frustration. Now again, imagine that mental state getting stuck in it. And it grows so huge that it becomes your environment, and it becomes your body, so that your whole life experience is of this clinging and continuous frustration. every single thing you want evades you, and your mind is just obsessed. That is the realm of the hungry ghosts. And now remember a time when your mind was really, really foggy. Maybe you've had the experience of a hangover, or trying to wake up after a surgery where you've been anesthetized. When you knew you could think better, but you just couldn't do it. Your mind just can't get it together. You can't put two and two together. It's just totally fogged up, so that you can't think clearly. You can't make decisions. You can't act appropriately. So again, take that confused, very obscured state of mind, turn it into the environment, turn it into your body. Turn it into your life experience. And basically that's what the animal realm is like. A kind of fogged up thinking. So now we'll continue to reflect. I am not capable of bearing the likes of the lower realms suffering. Now that I've attained a life basis, complete with freedom and fortune, that is so difficult to attain, and once attained, so meaningful, may I attain Guru Buddhahood, that ends all the sufferings of the lower realms. Guru Deity, please inspire me to be able to do so. In response to your requesting, the Guru Deity, 5-colored light and nectar stream from all parts of his body into you through the crown of your head. It absorbs into your mind and body and those of all sentient beings, purifying all negativities and obscurations accumulated since beginning this time, and especially purifying all illnesses, spirit interferences, negativities, and obscurations that interfere with henceforth attaining Guru Buddhahood that ends all sufferings of the lower realms. Your body becomes translucent, the nature of light. All your good qualities, lifespan, merit, and so forth expand and increase. Think in particular that a superior realization allowing you to attain Guru Buddhahood that ends all sufferings of the lower realms has arisen in your mind stream and in the mind streams of others. So looking at the rebirth in unfortunate realms is not a topic that we run towards, and it's not the only topic we're going to do tonight. But it really is a provocative topic to get us looking at the reason to go for refuge. And so I think one of the reasons that we find rebirth in unfortunate realms difficult as a topic is because, first of all, if you have trouble with rebirth, this assumes rebirth. And then we may have the mind that is doubting the existence of other states of being. And then we may really want to think that rebirth involves only going from one human life to the next, which is our big hope. And then we may also wonder, are these unfortunate states of rebirth actual places? Or are they just mental states that we have as a human being? And then another thing we may wonder is, like, why in the world does the Buddha teach this? Because it makes me feel scared, I get feeling guilty. And in my previous spiritual path, there were hell realms, and I thought I was kind of over with that. And so as I was thinking of all these questions that have come up in my mind and come up in the minds of others, then I was thinking about it from a worldly point of view. And if we go to the doctor and there's something wrong with us and we don't really know what it is and it's quite perturbing, do we want the doctor to lie to us and say, oh, well, yeah, that's a pretty serious symptom, but just take some vitamins, eat a good diet and walk, and it's just going to be just fine. Well, of course we don't want that. We want the doctor to sit down and be, frank with us and tell us what we need to do to be well. And so, in the same way, the Buddha taught about unfortunate rebirths, not to scare us, but out of his tremendous compassion so that we can prevent rebirth there. And so, just like a wise parent warns their child of the potential of danger so that they don't do something, they don't rein in the child to make the child terrified in explaining what it is that's dangerous. A parent lets the child know out of kindness so that the child knows that what they're about to do is dangerous. And they need to see that so that they don't engage in that kind of behavior. So I thought I'd just point out a few of the highlights from Venerable's talk on this topic. So first of all, it's important to know that nobody sends us to the lower realms. No manager of the universe, no creator God who gives out rewards and punishments. No external being that determines our rebirth. If somebody tells you to go to hell, it's not going to happen. So, where we're reborn is simply cause and effect. And we are the agent that creates the causes for the rebirths that we take. This is the medicine that we need to hear. So we create causes in our mind through what we say and think and do, and then these ripen into the various kinds of rebirth. They may be unfortunate rebirths, they may be fortunate, depending on the causes that we create. Venerable, throughout the talk, when she first gave this, repeatedly said, there is no punisher and there is no rewarder. So then the question I used to have was, okay, so are these actual realms of existence? Or can we just see them as mental states that we experience as human beings? Because that's the way I wanted to go all the time. Like, okay, rebirth is just one human life to the next, and it can be pretty ugly and messy, but, I'll always be in a human form. Well, Venerable answers this in this way. For sure, we can see these as similar to mental states that we experience as human beings, because we can see that there are some people who live their whole lives in tremendous physical pain and mental suffering. There's some people who live their entire lives in great fear and suspicion. This would be analogous to a hellish rebirth. And there are some people who live their life in constant dissatisfaction, running here, running there, trying to get what they want, and not being successful, always running around and looking for something. And that's just like the hungry ghost or the predator realm. And then some beings are just spaced out all the time. They may love drinking and drugging and just doing what they can, which is very much the spaced out, can't think clearly state, very much like the animal realm. So obviously we can see that there are states analogous to this that exist in the human realm. But, she says, Venerable Chögyam says, there are also actual realms of existence. A realm is actually the body and mind that people take. So there are hellish bodies and hellish minds. There's preda bodies and preda minds. There's animal minds and animal bodies. We can see the animals. That realm is so obvious to us. The other realms we can't see unless we have some kind of clairvoyant powers. So the whole purpose of doing this, reflecting on the unfortunate realms and really looking at it, is to get this awareness of danger of being reborn in the lower states. And when we're having this awareness of danger, and it's not a freaked out state, but just this like, whoa, there's a potential for this to happen, this then propels us to practice. That's the main reason we do this. We need to see that we need help. This is not a situation that I can handle on my own. I need wise guidance. And because I need guidance, then I need to turn to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So this kind of awareness invigorates our practice, especially when we think of the next part, that I don't know when I'm going to die. So then another question I've had in the past is like, so how can I get a body and mind that's so incredibly different from the one I've got right now? And so in terms of the body, well, as Venerable points out, we used to have a body that was this big. And then before that, we were inside our mother's womb, and we don't know how big we were there. But, you know, if we look back at our baby pictures and we can see the size that we were when we were younger, then it's really important to think about what was our mind like as a tiny child? What was the mind like at 1 week old? And how do those tiny, tiny beings, those 1 week old babies, how do they understand the world? And I think most of the time, at that point in time, we were really kind of zoned out. We were just focused on getting fed and being warm and being held, and that was about it. And so when we realize how different our mind can be at different points in our life, then why can't our mind be similar to a being in another realm? So in our human life, there are some people who engage in actions that are extremely harmful. We'd label them primitive. And we'll often say of this kind of action, oh, they're acting worse than an animal. So look at the actions that are worse than an animal. And then can you imagine a mind acting worse than an animal? And that mind then could be born into an animal's body. That a mind that is like that, that takes a body that is corresponding to what's going on in the mind, or a person whose thoughts are so driven towards harming others, fear and suspicion and revenge, could that kind of person whose mind is so stuck in that way take a body that matched the state of the mind and be born in a hellish realm? It seems so. And so if we just think about, oops, one moment. Okay, we'll try this. If we think about the activities that went on during World War II, the things that people endured in concentration camps, and the people who were inflicting that kind of torture on people in those camps, then the question is, you know, what if I was going through that? And that's not even a hell realm. Well, it was a hell realm on earth, but would I have had the mental strength to survive that kind of extreme suffering and pain? And if I couldn't handle it in the human realm, how could I possibly handle it in a hell realm? So the first thing we need to do then is to find guidance about how to change our mind, how to stop creating the causes, and how to purify the causes that we've already created. Therefore, the awareness of the danger of being born in these unfortunate states propels us towards taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And because we realize that we've created a lot of harmful karma, even though we may think, well, you know, I'm a pretty good person. Well, we don't really know yet what we've done in previous lives, let alone this life. So we need some help. We need some wise guidance. This is not a situation that my ego and self-centered thought can manage. So we need to turn to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And so with this kind of thinking, then Venerable went on to lead us in a meditation on refuge. And so if you want to re-establish your meditation posture, just take a moment and reflect on what we just talked about with the unfortunate realms. So all parts of the Guru Buddha's body and the Guru Deity's body on your head emit an assembly consisting of spiritual mentors, deities, the three jewels, heroes and heroines, Dharma protectors and guardians that fill all of space. Visualize clearly the objects of refuge surrounding the Guru Deity on your head, keeping in mind the good qualities of their body, speech and mind and activity. Think, henceforth, please protect me and all sentient beings from the fears of cyclic existence as a whole and from those of the lower realms. With intense aspiration, say, I take refuge in the spiritual mentor, the deities, and the three jewels. A stream of nectar flows from the three jewels, dissolving into you and other sentient beings. It purifies you of your bad karma, negativities, and obscurations. The three jewels inspiration enters your mind and enhances your lifespan, merit, and qualities of scriptural knowledge and realizations. Thus, take refuge 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 times, and so forth. With the awareness of the temporary and ultimate benefits of taking refuge in the three jewels, thoroughly train in the refuge precepts. Refuge means to entrust our spiritual guidance to the three jewels, the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Taking refuge opens our heart so that they can teach us and guide us along the path to freedom. Contemplate the effect that taking refuge in the three jewels could have on your life and lives. To deepen your refuge, cultivate its causes. What will your future be like if you continue to live on automatic? Be aware of the possibility of experiencing suffering in the future. Thinking about the qualities of the three jewels and how they can steer you away from potential suffering and its causes. Develop confidence in their ability to guide you. Remembering that others are in the same situation as you are, let your compassion for them arise, so that you seek a means to progress spiritually for their sake as well as your own. The Buddhas are those who have eliminated all defilements and developed all good qualities completely. The Dharma is the cessations of all unsatisfactory conditions and their causes, and the paths leading to those cessations. The Sangha are those who have direct perception of reality. with a sense of caution regarding suffering and with confidence in the ability of the three jewels. From your heart, turn to the three jewels for guidance. So for the past several minutes, just because I have to be honest about what's going on here, there's a little kitty trying to pull the tablecloth off. So it's a little bit distracting. I've lost my focus. So if you see this flipping off, it's because someone's down below. So at this point in the teaching, Venerable Children started reading from the new book, Buddhism, One Teacher, Many Traditions. And she went on to go through a number of very sophisticated, complex points, which we're not going to get into tonight, but I'll just give you a summary of what she managed to do, and then you can get a copy of the book and read through this. And I'm sure in the future she will teach more from this, but it's not something that we can just whip through tonight in the time we have left. So we can't just sort of get ourselves to just open up and take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha just based on, faith, or this is what my teacher said. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, every time he teaches somewhere, he really encourages people to, try out the teachings. Don't take the teachings just because, he's saying it, or some other teacher, or, even if we're reading in a book, and he says, really, test it, try it out, see it if it's going to work in your experience. And I think it's true, too, of, wanting to go to refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We really have to go through these reasonings and, the meditation that we just went through, looking at the unfortunate realms. We don't like it because what we want when we sit down to meditate is we want light, love, and bliss. And don't give me that hard part, I don't want to look at that. But I think the more that we look at it, I think it does make our mind stronger, and it certainly gives us some fortitude to see that, we've got to find a reliable guide, and why the Buddha is a reliable guide, and the Dharma and the Sangha. So what Venerable went through, just to, if you're curious, or you didn't hear the last teaching, or you forgot, what she went through was, she pointed out by going through these different reasonings, she quoted something from Nagarjuna, and it goes like this: seeing the Buddha is not with our eyes, it is through seeing the Dharma. And seeing the Dharma is not through seeing the text. It is through understanding the interdependent nature of things. The key to proving the existence of the three jewels is understanding the interdependent nature of phenomena. Then she went on to show how knowledge of dependent arising helps us to understand the Four Noble Truths, and from there, knowledge of dependent arising also enables us to understand emptiness and selflessness. And from there, based on dependent arising, we can also prove the last two of the Noble Truths. So beginning with the fact that all phenomena are empty of independent existence, yet rise dependent on other factors, we can prove the existence of the three jewels. And for this reason, the Buddha said that those who see dependence see the Dharma, and those who see the Dharma see the Tathagata. So I thought, in the time that we have left, I'll just go through two other things that she went through that can help us see why the Buddha, to begin with, is a reliable refuge. So she goes on to say, Venerable Children goes on to say, historically, the evolution of the three jewels is this. First there was the Buddha, then the Dharma teachings, and then there was the Sangha who actualized them. That's the external refuge, the outer refuge. The internal refuge, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha that we will become, then goes like this. It's a slightly different order. First, there is the Dharma jewel. That's the true cessations and true paths. Then we will become the Sangha jewel, those who have realized emptiness directly upon total purification of the mind. And at that point, we become the Buddha jewel. And this is the inner refuge that we ourselves can become. And that is the true refuge. But we have to start by taking refuge in the external refuge, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha that are already there. So, interestingly enough, both the Pali and the Sanskrit tradition refer to 4 kinds of fearlessness and 4 kinds of self-confidence. And these are 4 things that the Buddha is fully confident in and fearless in stating. So, the Buddha sees no ground on which any recluse, which means any kind of spiritual practitioner, Brahman, God, or anyone else, could accuse him of, number 1, claiming to be fully awakened although he's not fully awakened to certain things. No one can accuse the Buddha of making the false claim that he's fully awakened. Why? Because he is fully awakened. Then the second one, no one can accuse the Buddha of claiming to have destroyed all the pollutants that he has not destroyed. So making a false claim that he has freed himself of certain mental afflictions and defilements that he in fact has not freed himself of. No one can accuse the Buddha of making that false claim. Why? Because he's eliminated all the defilements. And the third point, no one can accuse him of calling things obstructions that are not obstructions. So people can't accuse the Buddha when he says ignorance, anger, and attachment are obstructions to nirvana or are the causes of misery. No one can accuse him of being erroneous and making mistakes in what he said. And the fourth point, no one can accuse him of teaching a dharma that does not lead someone who practices to complete destruction of dukkha. No one can accuse the Buddha of teaching a path that if you practice it won't lead you to nirvana. Why not? Because the path he teaches does lead to nirvana. So these 4 fearlessnesses enable the Buddha to teach the Dharma with perfect self-confidence, free from all self-doubt, because he is awakened regarding all self-aspects of objects of knowledge, because he has destroyed all pollutants, because he correctly identifies obstructions on the path, and because he gives teachings that lead those who practice them to nirvana. So those are the 4 fearlessnesses. So those are really interesting to just sit and think about one by one. And then there's another reasoning that Venerable Children presented about how we can get ourselves going towards having complete trust in the Buddha. And this is contemplating the 10 powers. And these powers also appear in the Pali and the Sanskrit traditions. And these are the exceptional knowledges that are exclusive to the Buddha. These enable a Buddha to do a Buddha's unique activities. They enable him to establish his doctrines, skillfully teach sentient beings, and lead them to full awakening. So I think we have time to hear these 10. So the first one is, the Buddha has direct, unmistaken perception. He knows the tenable and the untenable, the relations between actions and their results, as well as the implications of actions done by Aryas and all sentient beings. The Buddha is able to understand everything about karma and the results of karma, as well as the general principles, but also the individual actions a specific person has done that brings a specific result in one rebirth or another. And this is all possible because the Buddha's mind is clear of defilements, and the mind has the ability to perceive things when it's clear. So just looking at this first point, that the Buddha has the ability to know all of this, you'd have to have the strength of mind of a Buddha to be able to bear looking at everyone's past lives. I mean, at this point in time, I couldn't stand it. I just fall apart. I mean, even the sight of blood, I faint. And to see past life like this and see the details, the strength of a Buddha's mind is just unbelievable. So then the second power, only the Tathagata fully and accurately knows the intricacies of past, present, and future karma and their results, including subtle causes leading to a particular experience in the beginningless lives of each sentient being. The third power, the Tathagata knows the various destinations of ordinary beings, the different samsaric realms, and the paths leading somebody to be reborn in any of the different realms of samsara. The Tathagata also knows the destinations of the Aryas of the three vehicles. And the Buddha also knows all the paths to get to those results. The fourth power, a Buddha fully understands the world and all the various elements that compose it, all the physical elements, all the mental elements. He knows them with wisdom, seeing them as impermanent, conditioned, and dependent processes. The fifth power, the Tathagata knows the different inclinations of beings, their spiritual aims and spiritual paths, what they're attracted to, and this enables him to teach the Dharma according to an individual's faculties, abilities, and aspirations. The Buddha can tune in and know what kind of teaching they need to hear according to their individual inclinations and way of thinking. And so just thinking about this point really warms up my heart. You know, if you think about the people that you feel close to in this life at some point or any point, what do you really know about that person? And it always strikes me that, you know, especially actually when someone passes away, I'll have all of these recollections, and then I'll realize in recollecting all of these things that I really didn't know very much about the person at all. And I can say that of probably every single person in my life right this minute, because I'm so limited, and we tend to sort of describe a person in a certain way unless we do a lot of work on the cushion. That's what we get when we think of that person, which is so limiting. It's just a tragedy, really. And to think that these holy beings know us so deeply and have our best interests at heart, and they know exactly what we need to be guided. That's mind-blowing. So the sixth point, the Buddha knows the strength of each being's faculties of faith, effort, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, and teaches them accordingly. The seventh point, power. Because the Tathagata has mastered the jhanas, which is the form realm states of meditation, the 8 meditative liberations, and the 9 meditative absorptions, he knows the defilements, the cleansing, and emergence regarding them. The defilements are impediments that obstruct us on the path and prevent entering meditative absorption. The Buddha can identify what these defilements are, how to cleanse them, so that the method for eliminating them, their emergence, the way to go out of a state of absorption, how to go into meditative absorption, how to cleanse the impediments, how to come out of it. The Buddha is qualified in how to instruct others to attain these meditative states without being attached to the bliss of those concentrations. So this is incredible just to think about, that kind of wisdom. The eighth power, the Tathagata recollects in detail his past lives, the types of relationships he's had, who he has had strong relationships with. And this gives the Buddha the knowledge of who would be most beneficial for him to teach now according to these previous connections with different beings. The ninth power is the divine eye. He sees beings dying and being reborn according to their karma. And knowing this, he does what is most beneficial to guide each being to awakening. And he has the ability to manifest in different ways without identifying himself, but with the aim to benefit us. So, that's one to keep in mind. The Buddha is not going to show up in a uniform that says, Buddha. We've heard teachings that these holy beings can show up in any form, really, even a cup of tea. And they'll show up with us not knowing, and again, just they'll be there to benefit us in the moment of need. Oh, that we pay attention to that. And the 10th power, realizing with direct knowledge the Tathagata enters upon and abides in the unpolluted liberation of mind and liberation by wisdom, and knows that all defilements have been eradicated. He also knows the level of realization and attainments of each living being, and again, how to teach them accordingly. So reflecting on the 4 fearlessnesses, the 10 powers, we can see, obviously, even with this, which is not the full list of how we can be inspired to take refuge, but why a Buddha would be a good guide on the path, and why it is possible to trust the Buddha's teachings. So those were what I found to be the most compelling points in both of those topics for tonight. You probably noticed in the beginning that I didn't tell you what the topic was for tonight. That was that was on purpose. I didn't want someone to hit the stop button, knowing that the unfortunate realms were coming. And I remember a story that was shared by someone I know when I was at Kopan years ago. Someone was there who had been there, I think, in the early 70s. And apparently Lama Zopa Rinpoche spent the entire month teaching on the lower realms. The entire month. I guess it got to be pretty grim. But the person said the people who stayed, and a lot of them left apparently, a lot of people left. But he said the people who stayed really, really came to see that, okay, this potential that I have to end up going to a lower realm, I get it. And I can see that I can't manage this on my own. I need to find something else to take refuge in other than the things I've been taking refuge in for my whole life. And so I think as we continue to look at that meditation and then to reflect on taking refuge in the Buddha and Dharma and Sangha, gradually our refuge will deepen. And then, even if it starts off being a little bit in the zone of maybe it's a little bit of blind faith, maybe it's outright, I can't stand this, I'm going to have to just test it out reason by reason. If we stick with it, I think it'll really end up with us having very strong aspiration to practice. Our renunciation will certainly be very firm, and our confidence in the 3 jewels will be very strong. So, if there's any questions, I would advise that you write them to Venerable Thupten children, but there's a whole group of people here, and if there's comments, we have a bit of time for that.
So I just, thank you very much, Venerable Sumpter. I think it took me about, let's see, I took refuge in 1999. I think it took me almost 10 or 11 years to even be able to sit and think about the special powers of the Buddha. I thought it was all a lot of magical thinking, a lot of smoke and mirrors and things like that. But, you know, the longer I practiced the Dharma and saw how it was working on my mind, and realizing that part of my resistance to the 10 powers was as I was thinking of them through the mind of a deluded, ordinary being who couldn't possibly comprehend those kind of powers. But when I started thinking about my refuge as actually making the choice to take this kind of direction, and that there's somebody that loves and cares and understands me so much and has given me the precise map to get myself out of here. As the years have gone on, I've been more and more fascinated and curious and amazed by these powers. And then so when they talk about the Buddha's skillful means and how he's able to address, and all the Buddhas are able to address each sentient being's needs specifically by manifesting in these forms and by the teachings. This has really helped me to not so much like I had to, I still have to do it myself. The Buddha can't free me, can't make things okay. But it made me have more confidence that I had made the right decision. Because there's something really phenomenal about being guided by someone who has these kind of capacities. And for him to be able to do that, he would have to have this kind of capacity. He couldn't be someone like me. He couldn't even be someone like someone who realized emptiness directly. It would have to be beyond anything that I could imagine. So I found that the powers were reassuring, and they also built up my confidence. But I had to be practicing the Dharma for a fairly long period of time to be able to want to think about them with a bigger mind than what I would have been able to before. I could never think of them before because my mind was so small.
That was really beautiful what you said. Did everyone hear that? I couldn't possibly repeat it in the way that you just said it. I think I might ask you to say a summary of that, because it's really, really beautiful what you said. Is there any indication that people heard that, Clinton?
I'm asking.
Okay.
In general, they can hear, so they heard it perfectly.
Oh, great. Thank you, Venerable Senke. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, you know, I was raised as a Catholic, and so I can relate to that feeling of like, I'm not so sure about this yet. But in the way that you described it, yeah. I think we have to also have some kind of patience as we hear this and know that we are going to grow into this understanding. Thank you.
I remember when I first learned about the Buddhist path.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember when I first learned about the Buddhist path, I guess I was so overwhelmed by other things that I couldn't possibly consider working for everybody's benefit. It was like, all I want to do is feel good and be left alone. You know, I want to reach nirvana and not have to continue with all this other stuff. Everybody else can worry about themselves. And reading the description of the lower realms and accepting it just changed everything for me. I said, there's no way that I can leave my family to that. There's no way that I can leave my friends to that. These people, even the people that I don't know, anybody that I walk by on the street, would it be okay for me to say, I don't care that you're going to experience this at some point? And that was the first time that I felt like that I could eventually, you know, have some kind of spontaneous bodhicitta. Is it, you know, those things are worth aspiring to that, at least.
Anyone else? Great.
It's funny. One thing I learned about this topic that I found helpful, and it was something that one of my teachers in Seattle made a point of. Our cat's going crazy. She's only 7 months old. What can you expect? Made a point of. I think people who had been raised Catholic. He made a point of pointing this out. They had in one of their practice manuals these 10 powers, much shorter, and he made a point of showing them to us, especially people who he knew had been raised in a Christian with the idea of a omnipotent God. Because when you think about it, they're all knowledges. They're all things that the Buddha knows. And he wanted us to be clear that the Buddha wasn't going to come down and rescue us. And it's funny that we have it's a little hard to imagine these 10, but we accepted a God who could actually save us. We didn't have to really do the work. We didn't have too much trouble accepting that. So I think it's kind of funny how our mind goes when we start really looking at things. Anyway, they're all types of knowledge.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'll talk about. Clinton's story reminded me of something that helped me decide to come to the Abbey. And it was just the knowledge that, a lot of us have friends and family who aren't Buddhist. And a lot of us have friends and family who don't have a spiritual practice. And it was the same thing for me too. Knowing that the behavior of some people that I know and care about deeply is putting them in a very dangerous state. And it's not looking good, with my limited wisdom. I too thought, no matter how long it takes, I want to eventually be in a place where I can do something to help them. I can't help them now. In fact, most of the things I do, well-intentioned, it can often turn up not being helpful. I just don't have the skill. And so that's another thing about the unfortunate realms, that it can really inspire us to, stick with it for the benefit of all beings, no matter how hard it gets.
There's a couple questions.
Oh, there's questions. Well, I think we're almost out of time. Okay, team, this is a team effort.
What does taking refuge in the three jewels look like? Is it only something that happens in our mind, or does it mean a particular practice like reciting mantra or prostrating, etc.?
Oh, wow. That's a good question.
Look.
For me? Yeah. So it can be a formal ceremony. Is that what the person is meaning? Like how does it look, or what does a person do to take refuge?
I don't know, see if she clarifies.
Okay. So to take refuge formally, there's a lovely ceremony that you can do with a spiritual teacher. And it involves, you should spend, is there some more information for it? After we take formal refuge.
Yeah,
Well,
the guidelines in the blue book.
It's all on the web too.
Yeah.
There's a whole section on guidelines.
So in the Blue Pearl of Wisdom book, there's a lovely section there on tuptenchildren.org. There's all kinds of information about
How to relate to the three jewels.
how to relate to the three jewels, how to relate to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Venerable Yeshe?
Can I share something?
Yes.
What it means for me taking refuge?
Yes, of course. Thank you. It means taking time to practice and not taking refuge in going to the movie.
Yeah, the point you just brought. I heard Venerable saying sometimes, like, some people take refuge in the fridge, with the food. When I'm not happy, I go to the food, or I go spend money, or so. Since, like Venerable Semke shared, that it took her 10 years, it's for me it's big taking refuge in something that I don't totally connect with. So, but what I connect with is what is a good virtue. So when I take refuge and when my mind is in a weird place, difficult, I come back to what is good and what the Buddha taught us what was good. So that's where I go, and I pray, please inspire my heart, my mind, so I can stay there, that I don't act out of my anger, my whatever. So that's what I do. I pray really strongly. Please help me to stay in my heart, having an open heart and not act out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take refuge in the Dharma for sure.
Yeah.
Here's another one. How can we best renounce worldly sources of refuge when we're surrounded by them and people who use them?
How can we best renounce sources of refuge, worldly refuges, when we're surrounded by them? Well, there's a lot of things that we can do. First of all, we have to make time to get on the cushion every day and practice.
Think about, do they really bring any lasting happiness? Just the personal experience of, does this form of refuge bring me the happiness that I'm looking for? I mean, just put the whole logical personal experience in there and test it to answer that question.
Yeah. So anything that we do that's in a worldly vein, it's not going to bring, well, test it out. Is it going to bring lasting happiness? Just look at it and see.
One more comment. Somebody said that in all the years of being Christian, they never felt any otherworldly power, but after taking refuge, the children may have an experience of electricity going through their body and a powerful feeling.
So at this time of year in particular, I think it is really difficult to stay focused on, keeping our refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, as I mentioned in the motivation. There's so much going on, but I think it's really it's critical to find time every single day to get on the cushion and do our practice, and to listen to the teachings and reflect on them. And by doing that, we will build the strength in our mind to, we don't have to, divorce our friends or our family. We don't have to stop, doing our things that we do in the world to earn a living. We have to be, in the world. But there is a way of being in the world where we can still be a positive influence. And the more we practice, we don't have to go around telling people that we're Buddhist. But if our, flare-ups of anger are reducing and people are noticing that we're reaching out to them more often with kindness, they'll be curious about what we're doing. Not that that's not the reason for our practice, but I think it's critical to get on the cushion every day. It's critical to get yourself to a place where you can hear live teachings from a teacher. It's critical to come to the Sravasti Abbey and do a retreat. So, okay, thank you everyone. And next week there will be more about refuge. So, dedicate to merit. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase for